Welcome to this tutorial where I'm going to show you how to do your own saddle stitching by hand. When you request commercial printing of saddle stitching, let me first show you what that will look like. So you can see on the spine, I hope it comes into focus. There we go. You can see there is a thread running through the whole spine. Oof. There you go. And the page of the book is folded in half. That is what we will call the spine. And then where it is folded, you can see it being threaded through. Just to make things interesting, if you request saddle stitching commercially, it can also look like this. So you still have your page that is folded in half, but instead of the thread binding it together, you can see it has been stapled twice. And you can see on the outside what it looks like. Let me show you the booklet that we are going to bind using saddle stitch in this project. When I opened it up to the center, we also have a page, and at the center it is folded, and you can see there the thread running through. You can see with this project that I have used white thread because I have white paper. It is best to use a thread closest to the color of your paper or the ink where the folds are, so that it really becomes nearly invisible. For the sake of the demonstration, I am going to use a color thread so that you can actually really see very well what I am doing and how I am doing it. But when you're going to make your project, I suggest that you use a thread in a color closest to your project. Let me show you what tools and materials you will need. Firstly, you will need some thread. I am just going to use ordinary sewing thread. You're of course going to need a needle. You will need an awl. You'll need an anti-cutter, or some people call it a Stanley knife. You'll need scissors. You'll need a ruler. You'll need some bull clips to keep it in place. And of course, you'll need a cutting mat. Now that you know what you need, we can begin. I've made this diagram so that you can follow along with what I'm going to do. You can see this is the page size. It's 280 millimeters in this case, and it's 140 millimeters. This is the folding line, so that's going to create my square page for me. It's 140 by 140. It really depends on the size of the page how many punching holes you're going to make. Just make sure that they are evenly spaced and that you use an uneven number of punching holes. This is a very small booklet, so 5 punching holes are more than enough. You can see that I have allowed a wider space at the top, the outer top and the outer bottom, and then I've of 30 millimeters on each side, and then the space in between is 20 millimeters. That gives you 6 sections and 5 punching holes. I've also made this page just to indicate where we need to measure and make those holes. This is the booklet. I've already cut out the pages, but they aren't folded yet. First, I'm now going to measure using my diagram. I'm going to measure the center, and I'm going to measure where I need to punch the holes for the awl. So let me do that. I'm using the clips to keep everything in place, that the pages remain together. Now that I have measured out where the punching holes should be, I'm going to use the awl to punch the holes. That looks good. We're ready to thread, so I'm going to use the needle, I'm going to use the thread, and as I mentioned, normally I would have used white so that it is as nearly invisible as possible. It doesn't stand out, but because I want you to see where the needle is threading, I'm going to use something in a contrasting color. I'm going to use this yellow, then you can see what I'm doing. Just quickly going to thread it through. If you're wondering how much thread you need, you'll need about twice the length of where you're going to thread. Because our booklet is not going to have a strong outer spine, I'm going to begin in the inside so that we can actually hide the knot inside the booklet. I want to show you in my prototype. You can see there's the knot, and you can hardly see it unless you're looking for it. So we're going to start at the center punch hole. Now it actually doesn't matter if you go first up or first down. We're eventually going to reach both sides, and we're going to fill all the holes, and we're going to end up where we began. So I'm going to thread it through the center, right through that spine to the outside, and I'll make sure I'm leaving enough of a thread so that I can tie the knot at the end. Then I'm going to turn it around, and then I'm going to go to the top hole just above it, and I'm just threading it through. All right, and then I'm turning it around to the inside again. Okay, we began there. We're now at the second hole. Now I'm going to this third hole, the most top hole, and I'm threading it through. And I'm just holding that tail so that I can make a nice stiff and tight tension. Sorry, I'm thinking and then I forget to speak. All right, so now we're on the outside again. I'm just holding that tail, and I'm going to thread from this top hole to this second hole from the top where I already was. So I'm just threading it through the same punch hole, going through, and I'm just pulling it nice and tight. And then I'm going to the inside again. See, that looks good. It's nice and tight. And then I'm going to go to the center punch hole. Again, I'm holding the tail and I'm turning it around. And you can see I'm still holding the tail with my thumb. And then I'm just pulling it. Making sure it's nice and tight. That looks good. Now I'm going to go to this needle is going to go into this punch hole that is below the center hole. So there we go. And just make sure that it's a nice and tight toned. That's good. And then I go into from the inside, the needle goes through the last hole at the most bottom, and I can just pull it through, make sure it's nice and straight and tight, and then I turn it around, and now I'm at this bottom hole. You can see if you follow the front, this is the cover, this is the back of the booklet, and I'm pulling it through and I'm bringing it back into that last hole, same hole that we were already, and pulling it through. I'm just holding it nice and tight. Now you can see what it looks like. That's what a saddle stitch looks like. It's one continuous thread. Let's turn it around. And there is the center, and now I just want to bind it. So there's my first initial tail, and to bind it I'm just going to pull the needle underneath through here like so that I create this nice continuous thread line on the inner as well. And now I can just tie a nice tight knot. Okay, that looks good. And then I can cut the loose ends away. I can return the needle to its place. Okay, and we can remove the bull clips. And now you can see very well what this bind looks like. Let me just make sure that it is nicely in focus. And you can see that knot is nearly invisible. If this was a white thread, you would hardly see it. Let me turn it around on the spine on the outside. that you can see up close what it will look like. Let's just turn it around a little bit. Looks very, very neat. Now all there is left for me to do is fold my pages so that you can see that it is actually a booklet. All right, let's do that. If this was a bigger book, I would have first folded the pages before I bound them, but because it is a booklet and for the sake of the demonstration so that you can really see very well, it's not hidden in a fold of the spine by the folded paper and there's any shadow on it. I really wanted to show you very well what this bind looks like. I'm just going to get my bone scorer quickly to assist in the folding of it. As a last finishing touch, I'm just going to make sure that my edges are exactly the same. Because of the fold, that happens sometimes. Yes, nice, that looks good. Right, and there our booklet is complete with a beautifully hand-stitched saddle bind. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to see your projects. Bye!